Eternal check-in. The sun had set hours ago, leaving nothing but a vast expanse of darkness around me. My eyes strained against the dim glow of the headlights as I navigated the deserted back road. Up ahead, I spotted a flickering neon sign cutting through the black night. Vacancy, it read in looping cursive letters. The Starry Night Motel didn't look like much, just a single-story row of rooms off the side of the highway. The stucco walls were cracked and faded, and overgrown weeds poked through the broken concrete. But after endless hours on the road, it was an oasis. I pulled into the motel parking lot and turned off the engine. An eerie silence filled the air. All the rooms were dark except the main office. Above the door, a pink neon sign buzzed and blinked erratically. Cautiously, I approached the office. With a creak, the door swung open. "Hello?" I called tentatively. There was no reply. The small lobby was dimly lit and strangely musty, as if it had been closed up for ages. A chandelier missing half its bulbs hung from the water-stained ceiling. The floral wallpaper was peeling at the corners. A dusty guest ledger sat open on the front desk. I flipped through the yellowed pages filled with dates from decades past, and hundreds of signatures scrawled in cursive so ornate it was almost illegible. It was odd that such an outdated place was still up and running. A floorboard squeaked behind me, and I jumped. An old man with wispy white hair and circular spectacles stood at the counter, staring at me. He wore a faded bellhop uniform complete with brass buttons that looked to be from a different era. "Oh, I didn't see you there," I stammered. "Do you have any vacancies?" The man smiled, but said nothing as he slid a metal key across the counter. "Room 13. I paid in cash and took the key. As I turned to leave, he spoke. "We've been expecting you, Mr. Hayes." His reedy voice made my skin crawl. How did he know my name? I hadn't given it. "I'm sorry, have we met?" I asked. Again, he merely smiled. I hurried from the office, his pale eyes following me until I was outside. My room was, as expected, shabby and antiquated. Faded floral wallpaper, just like the lobby, heavy curtains that blocked any light from entering, one dingy bulb that hung from the ceiling. But it didn't matter. I was bone-tired from a full day of driving. After a hot shower, I settled into the creaky bed and switched off the light. Sometime deep in the night, I stirred at a strange noise coming from the hallway. Pressing my ear against the door, I could make out hushed voices and shuffling footsteps. I chalked it up to other guests and drifted back to sleep. When I awoke the next morning, warm sunlight streamed in through the moth-eaten curtains. Outside my window, the motel parking lot was full of classic cars from the 1950s and 60s. There were sleek sedans with big fins and hardtops with gleaming chrome details. I blinked in confusion. The parking lot had been empty last night. Where had all these cars come from? In the light of day, the motel was transformed. The stucco walls seemed brighter, less weathered. The overgrown weeds had been trimmed back. Inside my room, the floral wallpaper looked less faded, and the dingy bulb had been swapped out for a cheerful glass fixture. Even my clothing felt tighter and stiffer than I remembered. I looked down to see I was wearing a white t-shirt tucked into belted trousers, suspenders pressed taut over my shoulders. This had to be some kind of vivid dream. I pinched my arm but felt only a sharp sting. Outside, the motel guests milled about in colorful 50s attire. Two boys in leather jackets lounged against a shiny red-hot rod, while a woman in a poodle skirt and cat-eye glasses sunned herself poolside. Everyone looked so alive and vibrant, yet their actions seemed somehow rehearsed, like performers in a play that had been put on repeatedly. In the lobby, the front desk was adorned with a fresh bouquet of flowers. The chandelier gleamed brightly overhead. The bellhop smiled and waved. "Glad you could make it," he called out. "We have a big event tonight, as I'm sure you recall." I shook my head in confusion. None of this was making any sense. I had to get out of here. I rushed to my room and grabbed my camera bag and jacket, but when I tried to start my car, it merely sputtered and died. Just like the motel guests, it too seemed trapped in another era. Frantically, I ran to the lobby to call a mechanic. The bellhop blocked my path. There are no modern amenities here, I'm afraid. You'll simply have to enjoy our little venue as is. He checked his watch. Now I really must prepare for tonight. Please relax and make yourself comfortable. I spent the next few hours wandering the motel grounds, observing the guests. They continued their repetitive tasks like players in some bizarre time loop. Every so often I tried asking them questions, but they ignored me. It was as if I was a ghost, unseen and unheard. As dusk approached, a feeling of dread settled over me. The guests grew antsy, shooting furtive glances at the sky as they lingered near doors and windows. "Do you smell that?" one asked. "Is it time?" said another. Their apprehensive words knotted my stomach. Soon smoke filled the air, blowing in from the direction of the highway. The bellhop appeared, his face grim. "Come inside quickly," he shouted. "We must get to shelter." The guests filed into the motel lobby, their eyes wide with fear. I followed, pulse racing. We crowded into the small space, the floral wallpaper closing in around us. Someone flipped on a crackling radio. A news bulletin filled the room. A major highway collision has occurred just outside the Starry Night Motel between a tanker truck and a passenger bus. My blood ran cold. The resulting fire is spreading rapidly in the direction of the motel due to strong winds. The guests clutched each other and wept, having seemingly heard this broadcast before. I peered out the window in horror as the inferno raged up the highway. There was no escape. The flames consumed the motel in minutes. I huddled with the ill-fated guests, feeling the heat draw closer. Then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was lying outside in the dirt, daylight warming my face. The motel was a burned-out husk, any evidence of its former life gone. Was it all a bizarre, lucid dream, I wondered? Had I imagined it all? I grabbed my camera and scrolled through the images, hoping for evidence of what I had experienced. The parking lot was empty, the motel a crumbling ruin, until I reached the final photo, where I stood among the ghosts, trapped forever in their tragic loop.